explosions could be seen in the skies over Tel Aviv early this morning. As the Israel-Iran air war rages on, explosions are reported in Tehran, the city of Isfahan, and central Iran, whilst Israel said that Iran fired more missiles late yesterday and early this morning. Air raid sirens sounded in southern and central Israel, and the Israeli military said it had conducted strikes on 12 missile launch sites and storage facilities in Tehran. But perhaps for more on the latest developments, let's cross to SABC News Correspondent Trent Murray. Trent, a very good morning to us in South African time. Of course, you're live in Tel Aviv. Perhaps you could just speak to those latest developments coming through. I mean, the conclusion of the G7 as well now. We also saw US President Donald Trump back in the spotlight, calling for an unconditional surrender from Iran. As we're speaking, talk us through what's happening.
Yeah, pretty significant shift in tone there, isn't it, from President Trump, seemingly in the space of a week, still floating the idea of negotiations, now through to calling on Iran to issue its unconditional surrender. Certainly what we have seen here overnight were two more waves of those Iranian ballistic missile attacks, targeting once again Tel Aviv predominantly. We are being told by the Israeli Defense Force that there was around 10 missiles fired in total, and they were all largely intercepted. We're not hearing any reports from the ambulance service here of any injuries or casualties on the ground, but we certainly heard the explosions in the sky overnight of those interceptor missiles striking down those Iranian attacks, and also a lot of debris falling to the ground because of that. We also know that this is a much smaller number of missiles than what we've been experiencing in recent days. I mean, Friday into Saturday, Saturday into Sunday, we were talking about hundreds of them all being fired at once, but now it appears to be only a handful that are coming when these waves are unleashed. Now, there is some military questioning here in Israel, according to local media, around whether Iran's stockpiles of those missiles are starting to run low. Some estimates suggest that they still are in the thousands, and so Israelis are being warned not to become complacent. But where the numbers are starting to fall, some are suggesting here it's because of the IDF's operations to take out the launchers, of course, crucial. I mean, there's no point having missiles if you can't launch them. There's some estimates that around a third to 50% of the launchers have now been struck by Israeli aircraft, and that is what's causing the drop in numbers. But the state of emergency still certainly remains in place here. The schools are again closed today, as are most workplaces, and people are being told to make sure they know where their nearest shelter is, given there's very little warning time when those air raid sirens sound.
Trent, what is going to be the US's response or role, diplomatically, military, should the conflict escalate? What does that escalation inevitably then look like as we're speaking? But even responses coming from Russia, China at large, anything on that front as we're speaking?
It's very difficult to predict, isn't it? Because we know that the president up until this point has been saying that this is a unilateral action being taken by the Israelis, that the US is not involved in any sort of attacks on Iran. But then, of course, we are seeing the sort of things shifting somewhat in terms of both the tone but also military maneuvers. We're seeing a large number of American refueling aircraft being sent to this region. Around 30 of those aircraft have flown over from the US in the past 48 hours. Those are the types of aircraft you would use if you were going to conduct a major air attack, so that fighter jets can refuel in the sky. I mean, the Israelis are certainly not letting up the tempo in all of this. They are continuing to bomb Tehran. We're hearing reports of significant bombing targeting, according to the IDF, centrifuge manufacturing facilities. Those, of course, crucial pieces of technology in the nuclear enrichment program. We are also hearing that a university was struck that they say was linked to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. So I think right now the next 24 to 48 hours are going to be quite crucial. Certainly we have heard from Moscow and Beijing that they are calling for de-escalation in all of this, but no suggestion on their part that they are going to take part in any of this militarily. But as I say, I think right now all eyes are on one man, and that is President Trump, to see if he will make a decision to join this Israeli operation and start bombing Iran with American aircraft.
I need to wrap up just very quickly. How are neighboring countries responding and preparing for this? What's the regional de-escalation scenario also looking like?
Well, I think they're concerned about being dragged into a war that will see much of the Middle East involved. And so we know that all of the countries around this region are calling for de-escalation. We also know, of course, that in order for those missiles to arrive here in Israel, they need to fly over places like Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Syria. And we are seeing some suggestions, especially in Jordan, that the Jordanian Air Force is intercepting some of those missiles themselves in order to try and protect their airspace. Just briefly on the topic of airspace, I should mention, of course, Israel's been closed since Friday, but we've just seen the first commercial aircraft land here. It was an El Al flight, the national flag carrier, bringing back some Israelis. It's thought there's around 100,000 of them abroad looking to get home.
All right, Trent Murray, we'll continue to monitor those developments, of course, as they unfold. But thank you for your time at this hour. Trent Murray live in Tel Aviv.